Serious ethical issues are being raised after it emerged that US and Chinese scientists have implanted human cells into monkey embryos.
Welcome to the fascinating world of crossbreeding experiments.
A new breed of hybrid polar and grizzly bears are stalking the Arctic,
Where scientists and researchers push the boundaries of genetic possibility. From the bizarre to the brilliant, these unconventional pairings have resulted in some of the most intriguing creatures on the planet. Join us as we delve into the most captivating crossbreeding experiments, where the unexpected meets the extraordinary. Starting with Zonkey. Sounds like a zebra-monkey-donkey combo, right? Actually, a zonkey is a hybrid animal sired from a male zebra and a female donkey. But in case you're considering zedonk as an appropriate name, know that it is already taken. Zedonk is closely related to zonkey, but the difference is, it is made of a male donkey and female zebra. Makes sense? Unfortunately, these animals are sterile, which means they cannot produce offspring of their own. But the fascinating thing is that even though they were not produced in the wild, they can actually thrive well in the wild, though not many wild zonkeys have been seen. One would have actually thought that zonkeys and zedonks are the newest thing in the world, but hey, they have existed long before you were conceived. This species was mentioned by Charles Darwin in his world-changing Origin of Species, which was written in 1859. This is recorded proof that they were in existence at that point in history. Dated earlier, a man named Lord Morton crossbred horses around 1815. So, zonkey hybrids have existed in captivity, at least since the 19th century. One thing makes us curious though, what behavior does the zonkey exhibit? Yes, zebras and donkeys are similar in appearance and behavior, but we don't toy with zebras the way we do donkeys. Well, the reason is, zebras are aggressive in nature, unlike donkeys that you can ride and use for work. According to the study, the zonkey does not only inherit the stripes of the zebra, but also its wild streak. However, one of the zonkey's most favorable characteristics is its sheer power, a combination of the stamina of the donkey mixed with the speed and strength of the zebra. This gives the zonkey skills that can make it a valuable work animal that can pull heavy loads. Interesting, but what do we get if we combine a goat and a sheep? Jeep. Yes, that's what is. Of course, this is a combination that should not happen because of behavioral conflicts, but somehow, it happened. It is so rare that anytime one is found, it automatically hits the news. And for years, different breeds suspected to be Jeep have been tested, but most have proven to be just goats or sheep with odd features. All of these happened until one named Spring Rose was tested and confirmed to be a Jeep, thanks to Catherine Bell, a keeper of goats who unintentionally made a Jeep. Catherine does not normally run her goats and sheep together. They have their own pens with males and females separated as well, except for breeding season. However, after experiencing larger rams killing a small ram during breeding one season, she decided to place her smallest ram in with her does, not thinking of what could happen. Months later, one of Catherine's Nigerian dwarf does went into labor. After some unsuccessful pushing, Catherine could see the umbilical cord come down through the birth canal. The cord was detached, and the baby wasn't even in the birth canal. She lubed up and went inside to see if the baby needed to be turned to get in position. She felt that the baby was breech and very big. It did not bode well, and Catherine was certain that the baby was already dead. Catherine pulled the baby, but as it hit the ground, suddenly the baby shook its head, signifying it was alive. At first, she didn't know it was a different thing. She got a better look, and then she got confused. She had pulled this baby from a goat mother with her own hands, but it had a sheep's tail and long, almost woolly hair. The head just plain looked like someone had molded a goat's head with a sheep's head. As she wondered if she just made a Jeep, she began visits to some very excited veterinarians who first did hair DNA testing against all the bucks that could have bred the animal. And then blood was sent to Texas A&M for DNA testing, where a karyotype was done from Spring Rose's blood. Alas, it was true. A baby hybrid animal staring innocently into Catherine's eyes, now named Spring Rose, was a Jeep. Seems all of these hybrid animals are named in the same pattern, but we bet you'd be wrong with the Beefalo. What do you think? A half cow, half buffalo? No, you're so wrong. Although the original producers did have to cross a cow and a buffalo, what we call Beefalo today is an advanced mix of domesticated cattle and 37.5% American bison. This cross was chosen specifically as it has been shown as the sweet spot of the genetic pool, allowing all the best qualities of both animals to be present. Registered Beefalo herds are a consistent 3/8 bison, 5/8 domestic bovine heritage. Any animals containing more bison DNA are therefore considered catalo, and do not possess the same qualities or appearance of the USDA-recognized breed of Beefalo. Now that you know, let's delve deeper into Beefalo. It was developed in the early 1970s by a Californian producer who successfully interbred American bison with domesticated cattle. After nearly 150 years of selective breeding, the perfect balance was found in 3/8 bison and 5/8 domestic cattle. This new cross had high fertility success and a superior balance of traits for modern-day uses and needs. With this cross, the hardiness of the bison was retained, but it melded the easy temperament, superior carcass structure, and meat quality of domesticated cattle. By 1975, the breed's popularity had skyrocketed, and so the American Beefalo Association was formed. And by 1985, USDA meat testing had concluded substantial differences in Beefalo's nutrition profile when compared with traditional beef, warranting Beefalo its own meat label and regulations. Another crossbreeding you won't see coming is Narluga. 35 years ago, an Inuit man in West Greenland who was subsistence hunting for whales shot a trio of strange cetaceans with front fins like belugas and tails like narwhals. He was so bewildered by the odd creatures that he saved one of the skulls, hanging it on the outside of his shed. A few years later, a scientist visiting the area spotted the skull and ended up taking it to the Natural History Museum of Denmark. It was a strange specimen, larger than either a skull from a beluga or narwhal whale, but with teeth that looked somehow between the two. The hunter gave an interview through a translator, describing the animal's uniform gray bodies and odd teeth, visible even from his boat. Researchers thought the whale might have been the offspring of a beluga and a narwhal, but they couldn't prove it. But now they have. In a recently published paper, researchers confirmed that the skull does indeed belong to the only known specimen of a hybrid beluga-narwhal. The skull from the Narluga is striking. It lacks the teeth of a typical male narwhal, and unlike narwhals, it has teeth on its lower jaw. Those teeth look reminiscent of beluga teeth, except that they protrude outward, like shovels. What we know is that beluga teeth grow in a neatly vertical pattern. So after the test, it was clear that the animal was a male and a nearly 50-50 genetic mix of beluga and narwhal. This indicated that it was a first-generation hybrid. To find out which species was which parent, the researchers looked at the animal's mitochondrial DNA. You see, mitochondrial DNA resides in the powerhouse of animal cells, and it's passed down only along the maternal line. The hybrid's mitochondrial DNA was all narwhal, revealing that this whale was the offspring of a narwhal mother and a beluga father. Now take a few seconds to imagine the look of a human-pig hybrid. Actually, it doesn't look like you have imagined. The whole idea was to one day grow human organs inside other animals for use in transplants. And so, scientists successfully created the first human-pig hybrid embryo. As expected, the embryo contains genetic information from both species, pig and human. According to scientists, it was the first time they had successfully generated a human-pig chimeric embryo. They used the human stem cells and saw that the human cells can survive and differentiate into early stages of tissues inside a live pig embryo. Before the study, they were not sure whether the human cell could enter into the pig development, because pigs and humans are very distant species. They diverged about 95 million years ago. However, previous studies have shown getting the genetic material of one animal to grow in another was possible. It was confirmed in 2010 when researchers grew a rat-mouse chimera, but both those animals are far more genetically similar than humans and pigs. It was, however, a major finding to show that the cells of two large mammals like humans and pigs were compatible. While this discovery was a major step forward, the end goal of growing human organs in other animals was still a long way off. However, this research held hope for finding a solution to meeting the demand for human organs for transplant. What do you think about this experiment, though? Well, let's move to the next. Say hello to the combo of our two beloved sea animals. Dolphin. Yes, it is the nickname for a hybrid born as a result of some unlikely canoodling between different species of cetacean, most often a bottlenose dolphin and a false killer whale. The first known Dolphin was born in a Tokyo SeaWorld in 1981, but it died after just 200 days. In 1985, another young female hybrid called Kekaimalu was born after an unplanned union between a male false killer whale, called, and a female Atlantic bottlenose dolphin. The training staff was suspicious as soon as the baby was born, and that's because she was darker than the other dolphins, and her nose looked like it was chopped off. We could say a dolphin-whale hybrid, but here's the plot twist. The false killer whale is, in fact, a dolphin, despite its name. However, they are members of two distinct species, making Kekaimalu an example of a true hybrid. The birth of cetacean hybrids was especially surprising given the size difference between the two parent species. Common bottlenose dolphins are typically 2 meters long, while a male false killer whale can be over 5 meters long. Evidently, the creation of this hybrid offspring must have required some impressive physical feats. That said, the two species do appear to have a close bond both inside and outside of captivity. Yeah, they have been found hanging out and foraging together in the wild like real buddies. So, what do we expect? Marry your friend, they say. But can we say the same about a dog-fox hybrid? It seems the expansion and growth of rural areas into towns and cities didn't only bring humans and wildlife together, but also domestic pets and wildlife. While this can lead to issues such as the spread of disease, it can also have other unintended consequences, just like a dog-fox hybrid. For the first time in forever, researchers documented a case of hybridization between a pampas fox and a domestic dog back in 2021. A strange-looking female animal was taken to the Center for Conservation and Rehabilitation of Wild Animals in the veterinary hospital of Rio Grande do Sul after being hit by a car. Given her unusual appearance and characteristics resembling both a dog and a wild conid, the team decided to investigate her genetics to learn more about her. Initially, 4 species of wild conid that live in Rio Grande do Sul were suspected to have contributed to the hybrid animal. The first, the bush dog, is known to have a range that does not include the area where the animal was found. That leaves 3 remaining species that live in a wider area surrounding Vicaria, where the animal was found: the maned wolf, the crab-eating fox, and the pampas fox. The maned wolf was ruled out as it is the largest species of canid in South America, and the shape and size were inconsistent with the animal's appearance. The remaining 2, the crab-eating fox and the pampas fox, bear a similar overall appearance to the animal, but both possess fur that is more gray, whereas the animal is dark black with a few white hairs. The team of researchers analyzed the genetics of the hybridized individual and compared it with the 3 possible canid species found in the area and domestic dogs, as well as breeding between the species themselves. They found that the individual had 76 chromosomes, while domestic dogs had 78, and pampas foxes had 74. Hybridization of the 2 would therefore produce an individual with 76 chromosomes. From the results, we can conclude that the pampas fox was her mother, while her father was a domestic dog of an unknown breed. Now it's time for our subscribers' pick. It is believed that monkeys, lemurs, and apes are human cousins, and that we all evolved from a common ancestor. Doesn't that mean a possibility of an easy crossbreeding of humans and any of these animals? Take a look at this picture. You really can't tell if these are animals or humans because of the bizarre features they possess. While we can't be sure about this particular picture, we do know that scientists have created the world's first human-monkey hybrid in a laboratory in China. Just like they tried to create human organs in pigs, scientists have also tried to use monkeys to create organs to save human lives. They had injected human stem cells capable of creating any type of tissue into a monkey embryo. However, the experiment was stopped before the embryo was old enough to be born. If left to evolve naturally, the embryo would quickly have grown into a monkey with human cells. But adhering to ethical standards, the plug was pulled on the whole process long before the embryo began developing a central nervous system. If allowed, would the result have looked anything like this image? And what do you really think about these experiments? Let us know in the comments section. Just like humans and monkeys, another hybrid produced by cousins is guppy molly fish. Guppies and mollies are cousins from the same family, which makes people wonder if they can be crossed. The answer is yes, and in fact, they have been crossed. It's just that pairing them together is still quite surprising, because guppies generally only grow to 2 inches in size, compared to the much larger mollies, which can reach 4.5 inches. That was said because pairing them means trouble if you try to get a female guppy pregnant by mating her with a male molly. In case you didn't know, these fish don't lay eggs, but give birth to live young. So now imagine a female guppy giving birth to a large young from a male molly. She is likely to have difficulties in labor, and could even die during the birthing process. But when done the other way round, they can be okay. However, hybrid offspring of mollies and guppies are rather unpredictable in their appearance, being something of a mix between the 2 parents. In general, this genetic mixing seems to dilute their features back down to something more ordinary or wild-looking. They have been found to look somewhere in between the size and shape of guppies and mollies, with less pronounced features. But what do we call this mix? Golly or muppy? Let's just stick with golly because we can't pair a female guppy and a male molly anyway. Next on the list is Pizzly bear. This is the result of polar bears and grizzly bears breeding, which was first discovered in the wild in 2006. On that day, A hunter in Canada's far north killed a bear with white fur and brown patches, as well as the humped back and long claws characteristic of a grizzly bear. It was after DNA testing that it was confirmed the bear was a hybrid. Ever since that incident, sightings of Pizzlys in the wild have become more common. In fact, a 2017 study published in the journal Arctic documented 8 Pizzlys who were the offspring of one female polar bear that had mated with 2 separate grizzly bears. You see, normally, these 2 different bears don't live together, but global warming is really driving them closer. Grizzly bears are moving further north as temperatures rise, while polar bears are increasingly having to search for other food sources when hunting seals from sea ice becomes untenable. Polar bears have always relied on sea ice to hunt for seals, but now sea ice continues to decline, and polar bears are experiencing increasingly stressful conditions and higher mortality rates. Therefore, polar bears and grizzly bears have been seen near whale carcasses, which must have prompted them to engage in opportunistic mating, resulting in bears that look like a mishmash of polar bears and grizzly bears. Typically, they look like a whitish or blondish grizzly bear. They have grizzly's dish-shaped faces and those long grizzly bear claws, but they're mostly white with patches of brown. While it is good news that these 2 animals that never really ran into each other are now being forced to share closer quarters, it is also a signal that the Arctic is no longer as it once was. This could be very bad news for the planet's already suffering population of polar bears. Some scientists fear that hybridization could continue to the point where polar bears will one day be subsumed into the general grizzly population, effectively outbreeding them into extinction. As good as it is that polar bears will still live on in the hybrids, the survival of these hybrids is not yet studied and understood, which means they may just be gone forever. Kulakamba. In the forests of Africa, there have been rumors about a strange chimpanzee-gorilla hybrid known by all as Kulakamba. They have long been the subject of studies since the 19th century, but the hard proof that they truly exist has continued to elude scientists. However, the most recent mentions of Kulakamba can be found in a 1984 paper written by biologist Brian T. Shea, in which he outlines the long history of controversial debate that surrounded the existence of the purported hybrid species. The study explains that the first written descriptions of Kulakamba came from French-American explorer Paul du Chaillu during his ventures across equatorial Africa in the 1850s. And in his account, he wrote that he found a large ape in a tree branch and fired at it. As the poor beast fell, he moved closer to look, and what he saw was neither a chimpanzee nor a gorilla. According to him, the large creature had a round head and black face with high cheekbones and a fine jaw that was significantly less prominent than the other apes he had come across. He also spoke to locals who said they called the animal Kulakamba, most likely referencing its unusual vocal cries. Du Chaillu never explicitly claimed the individual was the product of chimpanzee-gorilla hybridization, but speculation mounted in the years ahead. European scientists even started to question whether some of the great apes that had been taken from Africa and placed in zoos were chimpanzee-gorilla hybrids. An example was one great ape called the Mafuka, which was brought from the Luango coast of Africa to Germany's Dresden Zoological Garden in 1874. It was an especially large and unmanageable animal that got numerous scientists in disagreement as to whether she was a chimp or a gorilla, while some concluded she was an example of a Kulakamba. While nothing was actually confirmed, advanced DNA testing has shown gorillas and chimps are extremely closely related, which means that hybridization isn't out of the realm of possibility. But while gorillas and chimpanzees are related, what do we say about spider goats? In our fiction books, when Spider and Man were put together, we got our beloved Spider-Man who shoots webs and flies from one building to another to save the day. However, in the case of spider goats, they actually don't climb from one house to another, but they do a great job saving lives as well. You see, scientists made a great breakthrough when they successfully crossed a spider with a goat to produce silk that is tougher than steel. The new fiber is designed to create a bulletproof vest for the US Army that can stop a shot from any gun. The spider goat is believed to be the first commercially viable animal created from the DNA of 2 species, and could be worth millions for the Canadian company behind the research. It also marks a significant shift in the debate about genetic experiments. Outwardly, the animals resemble ordinary goats, but at a transgenic farm run by Nexia Biotechnologies in rural Quebec, they are being bred with a single gene from a golden orb-weaving spider. What's more, milk from the female goats contains silk, which is 5 times the strength of steel. It is being used by the Pentagon to develop body armor that would be 4 times stronger than Kevlar but weigh less than a cotton shirt. Other commercial possibilities include using it to make biodegradable fishing lines and surgical stitches. Hybrid spider goats are bred using test tube techniques, where a single gene from the common orb weaver or garden spider is inserted into fertilized goat eggs. Each baby goat is only 1/70,000th spider, but when fully grown, the females can produce milk that contains a protein identical to spider silk. Scientists have long known that spider silk is one of the strongest substances in the world, but have been unable to reproduce it artificially. Attempts to farm spider silk have also failed because spiders are highly territorial and attack and kill each other if kept in captivity. But now, goats have come to the rescue. As a herd of 302 goats is gradually growing into thousands producing silks while enjoying their favorite artist, Dolly Parton, according to researchers. Tigon and liger. As you must have guessed, they are both from a tiger and a lion. But the difference is, the Tigon is a hybrid of a male tiger and a female lion, while the liger is a hybrid of a male lion and a female tiger. The Tigon is very rare, and the first citation of that word in the Oxford English Dictionary dates from 1912, while the first citation of liger dates from 1938. The first known breeding of a lion and a tigress in bondage probably happened at some point during the last part of the 1700s, and since then, it has happened severally, with approximately 100 ligers and less than 100 Tigons. The common misconception is that Tigons are smaller than lions or tigers, and they never exceed the size of parent species because they inherit growth inhibitory genes from both parents. However, this is not true because neither of these possesses dwarfism or miniaturization. They often weigh around 180 kilograms compared to ligers, which often weigh between 320 kilograms and 550 kilograms. Funnily enough, ligers and Tigons have issues cooperating with individuals from their parent species because their behavioral attributes regularly show as a blend of the habits for the two species instead of possibly either. Imagine not relating well with your family. That sounds boring and lonely, right? But what if we have a leopard and a lion? Meet Leopon, a hybrid big cat resulting from the union of a male lion and a female leopard. This parentage combination imparts the Leopon with an intriguing blend of physical characteristics from both its parents. At a glance, the Leopon possesses a body structure reminiscent of the leopard, but its size tends to be slightly larger. Its head, however, bears a stronger resemblance to that of a lion, often accompanied by a mane, albeit less pronounced than that of a full-grown lion. This mane is particularly evident in male Leopons, and sets them apart from their leopard mothers. The Leopon's coat typically features the rosettes characteristic of leopards, but these patterns can sometimes be overlaid on a lighter background, similar to a lion's pelt. The concept of lion-leopard hybrids isn't entirely new. In fact, ancient texts and artworks sporadically mention creatures that could very well be interpreted as Leopons. While these references are often shrouded in myth and legend, they highlight humanity's long-standing curiosity about such interspecies unions. However, it wasn't until more recent times, specifically in the 20th century, that confirmed instances of Leopons were documented. The most notable of these occurrences were in captivity. In 1910, a Leopon was reportedly bred at Kolhapur, India, and was described as having a lion's mane and a mixed fur pattern. Subsequent reports came from zoos and breeding facilities, where intentional hybridization attempts were made, often out of sheer curiosity about the outcome. While it's tempting to think of Leopons roaming ancient jungles or savannas, concrete evidence of their existence in the wild is scant. Most of the documented Leopons have been products of controlled environments where lions and leopards were close, allowing for rare mating opportunities. Thank you for watching. See you in the next video.